Some families are built on love. Mine was built on comparison. From my earliest memories, I understood that my sister was special. She was the miracle baby, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. And I was the other one, the afterthought, the disappointment wrapped in flesh and bone. My sister had everything our mother valued. Thick, cascading curls that caught the sunlight like spun honey, eyes so light they seemed almost translucent, and a face that stopped people in their tracks. I had straight, dark hair that refused to hold a curl, eyes the color of coffee grounds, and features that my mother never let me forget were painfully ordinary. Why can't you be more like your sister? Became the soundtrack of my adolescence. The comparison started young, but they intensified when we both became teenagers. Suddenly, my mother's critiques weren't just observations, they were assignments. She'd follow me around the house, suggesting I try my sister's makeup techniques, copy her fashion sense. Maybe if I just tried harder, I could be almost as pretty. Almost. Never quite, but almost. Ask your sister to teach you, my mother would say, gesturing vaguely at my face, as if it were a problem to be solved. She knows what she's doing. So I would. I'd swallow my pride and knock on my sister's bedroom door, prepared to humble myself for even the smallest scrap of guidance. And every single time, she'd laugh in my face. Not a gentle, sisterly laugh, but something cruel and dismissive that made my stomach turn. You think eyeliner is going to fix that? She'd say, looking me up and down with theatrical disgust. Or, no amount of makeup can help you. Trust me. This was our dynamic. My mother pushed me toward my sister for help, and my sister pushed me away with mockery. I was trapped between them, never pretty enough for one, never worthy of kindness from the other. The psychological warfare was relentless. My mother would sit us side by side on the couch and point out all the ways my sister was superior. Better hair, better skin, better facial structure, better everything. She did this in front of relatives, in front of friends, in front of anyone who would listen. My sister was the masterpiece, and I was the rough draft that should have been thrown away. I learned to make myself small. I learned to speak quietly, to take up less space, to apologize for existing. Some people describe me as a pushover, and they're not wrong. When you spend your formative years being told you're not enough, you start to believe it. You start to behave like it's true. My sister, meanwhile, learned completely different lessons. She learned that beauty was currency, that rules didn't apply to her, and that the world would bend to accommodate her whims. She became spoiled, entitled, and casually cruel, not just to me, but to everyone who wasn't useful to her. She latched onto the worst traits she saw in our mother and amplified them. The vanity, the manipulation, the complete lack of empathy for anyone she deemed beneath her. While I rejected everything our mother represented, my sister embraced it and built an entire personality around it. Being put on a pedestal her whole life for nothing more than genetic lottery luck turned her into someone fundamentally rotten. Someone who believed the world owed her everything simply because she was beautiful. And the worst part, it worked. She got away with everything. The moment I truly understood how expendable I was came during senior year of high school. I had a boyfriend, my first real one. He wasn't much to look at, honestly, and my sister never let me forget it. She'd make gagging sounds when he picked me up for dates. She'd tell me he was ugly, boring, that I could do better, though never explaining how someone like me could do better than anyone. She seemed to genuinely hate him, which was why what happened next made absolutely no sense. She slept with him. There was no lead up, no warning signs, no indication that she was even remotely attracted to him. One day she hated him, and the next she was sleeping with him behind my back. When I found out through a mutual friend, because neither of them had the decency to tell me, I felt like my entire world had collapsed. I confronted my sister first. She shrugged. He came on to me, she said, examining her nails like we were discussing the weather. What was I supposed to do? Then I told my parents, sobbing, certain they would finally see her for what she was. Let bygones be bygones, my mother said, not even looking up from her magazine. My father said nothing. He just stood there, a silent statue, while my mother dismissed my pain like it was a minor inconvenience. My sister wasn't punished. She wasn't lectured. She wasn't even mildly inconvenienced. That was the moment I realized they would always choose her. No matter what she did, no matter how much she hurt me, they would always protect her and abandon me. That realization didn't just hurt. It changed me. It taught me that I couldn't rely on anyone to stand up for me. Not my parents, not the men I dated. No one. I learned to expect betrayal, to anticipate abandonment, to build walls so high that no one could climb them. To this day, I struggle with relationships. Friendships fall apart because I can't fully trust them. Romantic relationships crumble because I'm waiting for the inevitable moment when they'll choose someone else. The way my family treated me screwed me up in ways I'm still trying to untangle in therapy, trying desperately to grow a spine after spending my entire life being told I didn't deserve one. The night before I started high school, my mother dropped a bomb that would reshape my entire future. We were sitting at the dinner table, my father pretending to read the newspaper, my sister texting on her phone, my mother picking at her salad. I was nervous about starting high school, hopeful that maybe this would be a fresh start, a chance to reinvent myself. Then my mother said, casually, like she was commenting on the weather, I'll be paying for your sister's college when the time comes. You'll need to figure out your own path, maybe community college or something. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. What? Your sister is older, she explained, still not making eye contact. It's only fair that she gets the financial support. You'll be fine. You're smart. You'll figure it out. I felt my eyes burning with tears I was determined not to shed in front of them. Why don't you love me? I whispered. Why don't you love me like you love her? My mother finally looked at me then, her expression impatient. I do love you, she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. But your sister is my firstborn. She deserves this. Deserves. As if love and support were rewards for birth order rather than and fundamental rights of being someone's child. I spent that entire night sobbing into my pillow, mourning the family I'd never have, the mother who would never see me, the sister who would never be my ally. But when the sun rose, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done begging for their love. I was done hoping they'd see my worth. Instead, I would prove it to everyone else. I threw myself into my studies with single-minded intensity. While my sister spent high school at parties, drinking and dating and coasting by on her looks, I spent it in the library. While she was out collecting admirers, I was collecting A's. It wasn't entirely noble. Part of me was studying to escape, to build a future far away from them. But another part, a part I'm not entirely proud of, was doing it to win. To have something my sister didn't. To prove that maybe, just maybe, I was worth something after all. By junior year, I had a perfect 4.0 GPA. By senior year, I was applying to prestigious universities with scholarships in mind because I knew my parents wouldn't pay for anything. When the acceptance letter came, I could barely breathe. Full ride. My dream school. Everything I'd worked for. Everything I'd sacrificed. Everything I'd suffered through. It was all worth it in that single moment. I spent the entire day in a state of euphoria. I planned how I'd tell them. I imagined my father's proud smile, my mother's surprise, maybe even a hug. For once, for just once, I'd have something to make them proud. I burst through the door that afternoon, waving the letter like a flag of victory. I got it, I shouted. Full ride. Full scholarship too. Good job, my father muttered, not looking up from his computer. My mother didn't even acknowledge that I'd spoken. She scrolled on her phone, her face blank, like I was a stranger interrupting her day. I stood there, letter trembling in my hands, waiting for something more. Anything more. Nothing came. I tried again. Did you hear me? I got a full scholarship to one of the best universities in the country. My mother finally glanced at me, her expression unreadable. Then she looked back at her phone and walked out of the room. That was it. That was my celebration. For the next week, my mother gave me the silent treatment. She wouldn't look at me, wouldn't acknowledge me, would leave any room I entered. I tried to ask her what I'd done wrong, why she was angry, why my achievement had made her hate me. She never answered. She just kept avoiding me, punishing me for succeeding where my sister had failed. My sister's grades were abysmal. She was barely scraping by, getting C's and D's, doing the bare minimum to graduate. She was only going to college because my parents could afford to send her, and even then, she'd only gotten into mediocre schools. And here I was, with a full ride to a prestigious university, and my own mother was treating me like I'd committed a crime. That's when I finally understood. She didn't just prefer my sister. She actively resented me. My success was a threat to the narrative she'd built, that my sister was better, more deserving, more worthy of love and investment. I made my mother's worldview uncomfortable, and for that, I would never be forgiven. That night, I stayed up until sunrise, writing in my journal. I wrote about the pain, the rejection, the profound loneliness of being unwanted by the people who were supposed to love you most. But I also wrote about my plans. I was tired of being the sad little girl begging for scraps of affection. I was tired of measuring my worth by whether my mother smiled at me. I decided right then that I was going to redirect every ounce of my pain into fuel. I would become successful, independent, educated, and undeniable. Even if I was never loved, I would be respected. Even if they never saw my worth, the world would. I left for college, like a prisoner escaping a lifetime sentence. The first few months were disorienting. I kept waiting for someone to criticize me, to compare me, to tell me I wasn't good enough. But it never came. For the first time in my life, I was judged on my merit rather than my appearance, and I thrived. I graduated with honors, top of my class, multiple job offers before I even walked across the stage. I accepted a position at a company I'd interned with, and within a year, I'd already been promoted twice. By 23, I was making 6 figures. By 25, I bought my first house, a beautiful place with high ceilings and big windows that let in floods of natural light. It was everything my childhood home wasn't. Peaceful, beautiful, mine. I posted about the house on social media, proud of what I'd accomplished entirely on my own. Everyone in my family liked the post. Everyone except my mother. I shouldn't have been surprised, but it still stung. Meanwhile, my sister's life was imploding in slow motion. She'd gone to the college my parents paid for and flunked out within 2 years. She got pregnant by a boyfriend she'd known for 4 months. My parents probably pressured her to terminate, but she kept it, insisting she and this near stranger were meant to be. They weren't. Even from a distance, I could tell their relationship was toxic. Lots of screaming, passive-aggressive social media posts, the kind of drama that makes everyone uncomfortable at family gatherings. But did they break up? No. They had another kid, because apparently the solution to a failing relationship is to bring another innocent life into the chaos. When I saw her post about being pregnant again, I had to lock myself in my bathroom to cry. Not because I wanted kids, I didn't, not then, but because I knew that child was being born into the same kind of toxic environment that had broken me. My sister was perpetuating the cycle, becoming our mother, and those kids would pay the price. Family gatherings became battlegrounds. I'd show up in designer clothes I'd worked hard to afford, carrying purses I'd saved up for, driving a nice car I'd earned, and my sister would immediately go on the attack. Nice fake purse, she'd sneer, not even greeting me first. Where'd you get it, a flea market? I see her trying to look classy again, she'd say another time, looking me up and down with exaggerated disgust. It's not working. One Thanksgiving, I'd barely walked through the door when she said, voice dripping with venom, I see you're dressed up again like the stuck-up bitch you are. She'd curse at me in front of her young sons, call me names, mock mock my weight, criticize everything about me. And my parents, they'd say nothing. They'd sit there, silent, letting her verbally abuse me in their home. I started dreading holidays. I'd make up excuses not to go, or I'd leave early, or I'd drink too much wine just to get through dinner. The family I'd never really had was even more intolerable now that I'd tasted independence. My extended family would occasionally ask about my career, and I'd share bits and pieces, carefully edited, never revealing how successful I'd actually become. If my uncle congratulated me on a promotion, my mother would interrupt. "This is boring," she'd say loudly, cutting me off mid-sentence. "Can we talk about something else?" Once, I swear I heard her mutter under her breath, "It's probably not even true anyway." I stopped trying to connect with them. I stopped hoping they'd be proud. I showed up for obligation, stayed for appearance's sake, and left as soon as socially acceptable. My relationship with my sister was non-existent by that point. We were connected only by blood and social media, two people who happened to share DNA and a childhood home, but nothing else. She resented my success. I resented her cruelty. We were locked in an unspoken war that neither of us could win. I didn't realize how much that war was about to escalate. It was a Saturday morning in late summer. I just finished a brutal work week and was looking forward to a quiet weekend, coffee on my balcony, maybe a movie, perhaps catching up on reading I'd been putting off. The doorbell rang. I padded to the door in my pajamas, expecting a package or maybe a neighbor. Instead, I found my sister's two sons standing on my porch, holding overnight bags, looking confused and frightened. I knew them, vaguely. I'd seen them at holiday dinners, heard them called by their names, though they'd never heard mine. They were 7 and 10 years old, both with their mother's light eyes and their father's dark hair. The older one started, then trailed off because he didn't actually know my name. "What are you doing here?" I asked, looking around for my sister's car, for any adult, for any explanation. "Mom said you're babysitting us," the younger one explained, his voice small. "She's going on vacation for 8 weeks. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "She what?" "She said you agreed to watch us while she's gone," the older boy added, shifting his bag from one hand to the other. "She dropped us off down the street and told us to walk to your house." 8 weeks. My sister, who I hadn't spoken to since July 4th, when she'd mocked my weight at our parents' barbecue, had decided I would be her free babysitter for 2 months. Without asking, without warning, without any conversation whatsoever. I looked at the boys, who were clearly as confused as I was, and I couldn't take it out on them. This wasn't their fault. "Come inside," I said gently. "Let me figure this out." They came in, setting their bags by the door, looking around my house with wide eyes. I settled them in the living room with the TV remote, and went to the kitchen to call my sister. She ignored my first call, and my second, my third, fourth, fifth. I kept calling. I was shaking with rage, my hands trembling as I hit redial again and again. On the 11th try, she finally picked up. "What?" she snapped, like I was the one inconveniencing her. "What are your kids doing on my doorstep?" I hissed, trying to keep my voice down so her sons wouldn't hear. "You can't just dump them here without asking me first." "I'm on vacation," she said casually. "You're watching them. Deal with it." "No," I said firmly. "Absolutely not. Come pick them up right now, or I'm calling Child Protective Services." I was already Googling the number, my phone on speaker, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then her voice changed, dropped, became something cold and threatening that made my blood run ice. "Call CPS and I'll call your job," she said slowly, each word deliberate. "I'll tell them you're not taking your bipolar medication. I'll tell them you're unstable. I'll get you fired." "Is that really what you want?" I froze. My career was everything. It was my identity, my proof of worth, my escape from being the worthless daughter my mother had always told me I was. I'd built my entire adult life around being successful, being respected, being someone who mattered. And my sister knew exactly where to strike. I hung up without responding, my hands shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. I stood in my kitchen trying to remember how to breathe. My sister had just blackmailed me. Actually, genuinely blackmailed me. Threatened to destroy my career. The one thing I'd built entirely on my own. The one thing that proved I was more than what my family said I was. I looked toward the living room, where her sons were quietly watching TV, and felt a wave of despair wash over me. I couldn't watch them. I had a trip planned in 3 weeks to Australia to meet my long-distance boyfriend's family for the first time. This was supposed to be a huge milestone in our relationship, and now everything was falling apart. But if I refused, my sister would follow through with her threat. I knew she would. She'd always hated my success, always resented that I'd built something she couldn't tear down. She'd jump at the chance to destroy it. I called my mother, hoping against hope that she'd see reason. She didn't. "Your sister needs you," my mother said, her voice cool and unsympathetic. "She's done a lot for you over the years. It's time you return the favor." "Name one thing," I said, my voice rising. "Name one single thing she's ever done for me." Silence. "That's what I thought," I continued, tears streaming down my face. "She's never been there for me. Neither have you. You've both treated me like dirt my entire life, and now you expect me to drop everything for her? You're being dramatic," my mother sighed. "They're old enough to take care of themselves mostly. Just let them stay with you. It's not that big of a deal." "It's 8 weeks," I shouted. She didn't even ask. She just dumped them here like their luggage. "Well, maybe if you were a better sister." I hung up on her. Then I called her back and told her she needed to come to my house immediately. If she wouldn't take the kids, she could at least watch them while I went to Australia. I wasn't going to let my sister ruin everything. When my mother finally arrived hours later, she looked at me with the same hateful eyes she'd always had. We sat in my living room, my beautiful, peaceful living room that I'd decorated myself, and she lectured me about family obligations. "Where's your sister?" I demanded. What vacation is so important that she'd abandon her kids? My mother's expression shifted. She looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. "Tell me," I pressed. "I deserve to know if I'm being forced into this. Finally, she admitted it. She's not on vacation. She's with her sugar daddy. He flew her out for 2 months. I actually laughed. I thought she was joking, but her face remained serious, and the laughter died in my throat. You're kidding. She needs this, my mother said defensively. She deserves to have some fun. Her life is hard. Her life is hard? I repeated incredulously. She has 2 kids she's abandoning to go sleep with a sugar daddy, and you're defending her? At least she's beautiful enough to have options. My mother shot back. At least men want her. You've always been jealous of that. The words hung in the air like poison. Get out, I said quietly. No. Get out of my house. I'm not going anywhere, she said, standing up. You need to grow up and help your family for once instead of being selfish. I tried to physically guide her toward the door, and she shoved me hard. I stumbled backward into my coffee table. On top of it was a vase my boyfriend had given me, a beautiful, delicate piece that meant everything to me. It fell, shattering into hundreds of pieces on my hardwood floor. I stared at the broken glass, and something inside me broke too. I started screaming, truly screaming, louder than I'd ever screamed in my life, telling my mother to get out before I called the police. I was having a complete breakdown, and I didn't care who heard me. When she finally left, slamming the door behind her, I collapsed on the floor next to the broken vase and cried. My nephews peeked out from the guest room, their eyes wide and frightened. Are you okay? The older one asked softly. I wiped my eyes and tried to smile. Yeah, buddy. I'm okay. Are you guys hungry? That night changed everything. I ordered pizza for all of us and let the boys play video games in my living room. They were hesitant at first, clearly shell-shocked from everything they'd witnessed. But slowly, they started to relax. My younger nephew, whose 2 front teeth were missing, gave me a gummy smile when I handed him a slice of pepperoni pizza. My older nephew actually laughed when I made a joke about beating him in Mario Kart, and I realized something that made my heart ache. These were good kids, sweet kids. They'd been dropped off at a stranger's house by their own mother and had handled it with more grace than most adults would. They weren't like my sister at all. Over the next few days, I got to know them better. They were polite, constantly saying please and thank you. They cleaned up after themselves without being asked. They were quiet and well-behaved, like they'd learned that taking up space was dangerous. I recognized that behavior. I'd perfected it myself as a child. When I looked through the clothes my sister had packed, my heart sank. Everything was too small or worn out. My older nephew's shirts barely fit him. Both boys had holes in their socks. It was clear my sister had been neglecting them, treating them as an afterthought while she focused on herself. Want to go to the mall? I asked them one afternoon. Their faces lit up like I'd suggested Disneyland. We spent hours there. I let them pick out new clothes that actually fit, new shoes that weren't falling apart, whatever caught their eye. Every time they asked, can I really have this? My heart broke a little more. In the toy store, they pressed their faces against the glass display of Nintendo Switches, whispering to each other about which games they'd play if they ever got one. I bought them each a Switch. They both burst into tears, full-on sobbing, hugging me, thanking me over and over. The older one cried again in the car on the way home, and when I asked if he was okay, he looked at me with tears streaming down his face and asked, why are you being so nice to us? Why do we deserve it? I had to pull over because I couldn't see through my own tears. Because you're my boys too, I told him, holding both of them. And you deserve to be happy just because you exist. You don't have to earn kindness. You just deserve it. That night, as they played on their new Switches, happy and laughing and acting like kids should act, I realized something terrifying. I love them. Deeply. Completely. And I had no idea what I was going to do when my sister came back. My boyfriend Eric called that night from Australia. I broke down immediately, telling him everything. The blackmail, the abandonment, my mother's cruelty, the broken vase, how scared and trapped I felt. She's committing crimes, Eric said firmly. Abandonment, blackmail. You need evidence. Evidence of what? Call her again. Record her. Get her to repeat the threat. You need proof of what she's doing in case she tries to destroy your career. It was brilliant. Terrifying, but brilliant. The next morning, after I'd made the boys pancakes and they were safely occupied in the living room, I locked myself in my bedroom and called my sister, phone set to record. It didn't take much to get her going. I'm calling CPS, I told her. You can't abandon your kids like this. She laughed. That same sinister laugh she'd always had when she thought she'd won. Go ahead. I'll call your job. I'll tell them you're mentally ill, that you're dangerous. I know you're not really taking your medication, or maybe you are. Who cares? They won't know the difference. They'll just see a crazy person who shouldn't be working there. You'd lie about that? I'd do whatever it takes, she hissed. You're nothing without that job. You go back to being a pathetic loser without it. And honestly, you deserve it. You've always thought you were better than me just because you have some fancy degree and a nice house. But you know what? I'm the kind of woman who can make millions from a sugar daddy. You never have to worry about that, do you? You're too ugly. I let her rant. I let her incriminate herself completely. By the time I hung up, I had everything I needed. The next morning, before the boys woke up, I called CPS. I explained everything. The abandonment, the false pretenses, the coercion, the blackmail. I played them the recording. The agent listened carefully and told me they'd open an investigation immediately. Your sister is committing several crimes, the agent said. We'll be contacting her as soon as possible. When I called my mother to tell her what I'd done, she hung up on me immediately. I knew she'd warned my sister. I knew retaliation was coming, but I'd prepared for it. 3 days later, I was called into an emergency meeting with my supervisors. I walked in with my briefcase, my heart pounding but my face calm. They sat across from me, expressions grave, and explained that they'd been contacted by a trusted family source claiming I was dangerously mentally ill ill and unmedicated. I opened my briefcase and pulled out folders, 5 years of prescription records showing I'd never missed a pickup. Letters from my primary care physician, my therapist, and my psychiatrist, all confirming my stability and consistent treatment. Documentation of every appointment, every check-in. My sister is trying to sabotage me, I explained calmly. We've had a contentious relationship, and she's currently under investigation by CPS for child abandonment. This is retaliation. My supervisors reviewed the documentation. The meeting lasted 15 minutes. They apologized for the inconvenience. They congratulated me on my recent successful quarter. They assured me this matter was closed. I left giggling. Actually giggling. My sister's plan had backfired so spectacularly that I couldn't help but laugh. I called her from my car. They didn't believe you, I said sweetly. Your little plan failed, just like you failed at everything else in your life. She screamed. She called me every name in the book. She threatened to come home and make me regret everything. Go ahead, I said. I'm not scared of you anymore, but I should have been. She came back early, flew home immediately, consumed by rage. At 8 a.m. the next morning, someone pounded on my door so hard I thought it would break. I opened it to find my sister, my mother, and a man who had to be 6'5" and close to 300 pounds of pure muscle. Before I could speak, the man grabbed me and threw me to the ground. They stormed into my house. The man spoke only Russian. My nephews ran out of the guest room, confused and scared, and when they realized what was happening, they started begging. Please, Mom, let us stay with Andy. We want to stay here. I tried to protect them. I tried to get between them and the stranger. He grabbed my head and slammed it into the wall so hard I saw stars. I collapsed, watching helplessly as he carried my screaming nephews out the door. My sister walked over to where I lay on the floor, looked down at me, and spit directly in my face. Then they were gone. I called the police immediately. Thanks to my habit of noticing details, a skill I'd honed through my high-pressure job, I'd memorized their license plate number. Hours later, the police found them on the highway. The Russian man fought back, punching officers even with guns drawn. My sister physically attacked the officer trying to arrest her. Both were taken into custody. My sister used her one phone call to ask me for bail money. I said no. What followed was 2 years of legal warfare. I pressed charges for breaking and entering, assault, and child endangerment. I filed for emergency custody of my nephews. My sister faced charges for child abandonment, assault on police officers, and a dozen other crimes. The Russian man, who turned out to be her sugar daddy's bodyguard, faced even more. My mother testified against my sister to avoid prison time herself. Watching her throw her golden child under the bus to save herself was the most satisfying moment of my life. The custody battle was brutal. My sister's ex and his family fought me for the boys. Lawyers' fees piled up. Court dates dragged on. But I didn't care about the cost or the time. Those boys deserved better. During the criminal trial for the breaking and entering, the judge mentioned my custody case. My sister, who apparently hadn't been told, found out right there in the courtroom that I was trying to take her kids. She lost her mind. In the middle of the courtroom, she stood up, screamed my name, and lunged at me. She clawed in my face, tried to rip out chunks of my hair, and bit down on my forearm so hard it drew blood and later got infected. The bailiff pulled her off me within seconds, but the damage was done to my arm and to her case. She'd just assaulted me in front of a judge. Her fate was sealed. It took nearly 2 years, but I won. My sister was sentenced to life in prison, the result of multiple charges stacked together. My mother was out of my life forever, discredited and alone, and I was granted full custody of my nephews. The day I brought them home, I decorated their bedrooms, painted walls, new furniture, toys and books, and everything I wished I'd had as a kid. When they walked in and saw their rooms, they started crying. My youngest found his stuffed dog, the one I'd been sleeping with since he left, sitting on his bed. He ran to me, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. My oldest wrapped his arms around both of us, and we stood there in the hallway, all 3 of us crying. I knew it, Auntie, he whispered through his tears. I just knew you'd come back for us. Today, they call me Auntie, but I'm their mother in every way that matters. I help with homework, attend soccer games, make their lunches, and tuck them in at night. I'm breaking the cycle that broke me. I teach them that they're worthy of love just for existing, that they don't have to earn affection through achievement or appearance. That family isn't always the people you share blood with. Sometimes it's the people who choose to love you anyway. My sister is behind bars. My mother is gone from our lives. And I've finally learned what family actually means. I'm not the ugly duckling anymore. I'm not invisible. I'm not worthless. I'm a mother, a survivor, and finally, blessedly, free.